The concert hall gleamed under crystal chandeliers as the city's elite gathered for the annual charity gala. Tuxedos and evening gowns filled the velvet seats, champagne glasses caught the light, and conversation hummed with the self-satisfied tone of people who had paid $500 a plate to feel philanthropic. In the back hallway, Thomas Rivera pushed his cleaning cart quietly, trying to remain invisible. At 38, he had perfected the art of being unseen. Worn work uniform, calloused hands, shoulders bent from years of manual labor. He was the janitor, part of the background, as forgettable as the walls he cleaned. But Thomas carried something none of these wealthy patrons knew about, a gift he had buried years ago when life demanded survival over dreams. "Hey, janitor," a voice called from the stage entrance. Thomas turned to see Marcus Holloway, the concert hall's event coordinator, gesturing impatiently. Behind him stood Adrian Castellane, the renowned pianist scheduled to perform tonight, and beside Adrian, Richard Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Industries and the gala's main sponsor. "We have a situation," Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Adrian's hand is injured. He can't perform." Adrian held up his right hand, wrapped in a medical brace. "Tendinitis. My doctor said if I play tonight, I risk permanent damage, which means we have 500 guests expecting a concert and no pianist," Richard said, his tone sharp with irritation. "Do you have any idea what this does to the event?" Thomas stood quietly, unsure why they were telling him this. "Unless," Marcus said, a cruel smile playing at his lips, "our janitor here would like to fill in." The men laughed, the joke obvious. A janitor performing for the city's elite. How absurd. But Adrian noticed something, the way Thomas's eyes had flickered toward the grand piano on stage, a longing so profound it was almost painful. "Wait," Adrian said quietly. "Can you play?" Thomas hesitated. He had spent 15 years making himself invisible, swallowing his past, focusing only on raising his daughter after her mother died. Music was a luxury he couldn't afford. "I used to," Thomas admitted quietly. "A long time ago." "Oh, this I have to see," Marcus said with mock enthusiasm. "Come on, janitor. Show us your talents. Play something." The other men laughed again, already anticipating the embarrassment. Richard pulled out his phone, ready to record what promised to be entertaining failure. Thomas looked at the piano, then at these men who saw him as nothing more than a source of amusement. He could walk away, return to his cart, maintain his invisibility, but something in him refused. Maybe it was exhaustion from years of pretending he was less than he was. Maybe it was the memory of his daughter asking why he never played anymore. Maybe it was simply that the piano called to him the way it always had. "All right," Thomas said quietly. He walked onto the stage, aware of the audience beginning to notice the commotion. A janitor in work clothes approaching the concert grand piano. Whispers rippled through the hall. Thomas sat at the bench, his work gloves still on his hands. He pulled them off slowly, revealing fingers scarred by years of manual labor but still nimble, still remembering. He placed his hands on the keys and closed his eyes. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the hall. The laughter died instantly. Thomas's fingers moved across the keys with a fluidity that spoke of thousands of hours of practice, of natural talent refined through dedication. The music wasn't just technically perfect, it was emotionally devastating. Each note carried weight, meaning the accumulated sorrow and beauty of a life lived in the shadows. In the audience, conversation stopped. Glasses were set down. People leaned forward, transfixed. Adrian stood frozen backstage, his professional assessment immediate and undeniable. This wasn't amateur playing. This was mastery, the kind of technique and emotional depth that took decades to develop. Richard Whitfield, who had been ready to mock, found his phone forgotten in his hand. His eyes were suddenly wet, though he couldn't have explained why. The music reached something deep inside him, some place he had buried beneath years of ambition and corporate success. Thomas played as if the world had fallen away. His fingers remembered everything his mind had tried to forget. The conservatory where he had studied, the competitions he had won, the future that had seemed so certain before his girlfriend got pregnant at 23, before she died giving birth to their daughter, before responsibility demanded he choose survival over art. He transitioned seamlessly into Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the third movement, technically brutal, emotionally raw. His hands flew across the keys with power and precision, every note clear, every phrase perfectly shaped. In the fourth row, a woman openly wept. Around the hall, distinguished guests found themselves moved in ways they couldn't articulate. The music stripped away pretense, social standing, wealth, leaving only raw human emotion. When Thomas finally lifted his hands from the keys, the hall sat in absolute silence. Then Richard Whitfield stood, tears streaming down his face unashamedly, and began to applaud. The rest of the audience followed, rising to their feet, the ovation thunderous and sustained. Thomas sat at the piano, stunned. He had forgotten what this felt like, being seen, being recognized not for what he did to survive, but for who he truly was. Backstage, Marcus had gone pale. Adrian was already walking toward Thomas, his expression one of profound respect. "Where did you study?" Adrian asked as Thomas finally stood. "Thornwood Conservatory," Thomas said quietly. "Full scholarship. I was going to audition for the Philharmonic. What happened? Life happened. My daughter happened. Her mother died. And suddenly music seemed selfish when I had a baby to feed." "You gave up everything," Adrian said, understanding in his voice. "I gave up one thing to gain another. My daughter is 16 now. She's healthy, smart, happy. That matters more than any concert hall." Richard approached, his face still wet with tears. "I need to apologize. We were cruel. We treated you like entertainment, like a joke." "You treated me like what I appear to be," Thomas said without bitterness. "A janitor in a work uniform. You saw what everyone sees." "But you're not just a janitor," Richard said. "Yes, I am," Thomas replied gently. "That's my job. That's how I provide for my daughter. The music is just something I used to do." "Used to?" Adrian interjected. "What you just played, that's not used to. That's active living mastery you've been practicing." Thomas smiled slightly. "The school where I work at night lets me use their piano after hours. While I clean, I play. My daughter doesn't know. I didn't want her to feel guilty about the choices I made." "She shouldn't feel guilty," Richard said firmly. "But she should know. And so should everyone else." Over the next hour, the gala transformed. Thomas changed out of his work uniform into one of Adrian's spare tuxedos. He returned to the stage, this time as the evening's featured performer. He played Rachmaninoff, Liszt, Chopin. Pieces he had learned as a young man and kept alive through stolen hours in empty school gymnasiums. Each performance was met with standing ovations. Between pieces, Richard spoke to the audience about judgment, about seeing only surfaces, about the extraordinary people we overlook because they don't fit our expectations of where talent should appear. "This man serves our community in ways we never notice," Richard said. "He cleans our buildings, maintains our spaces, and apparently creates beauty in secret. Tonight, he reminded all of us that worth isn't measured by wealth or position. It's measured by the grace with which we move through the world." After the final piece, as the audience gave one last ovation, Adrian approached Thomas with a proposition. I teach at Thornwood Conservatory. I also have connections with the Philharmonic. I'd like to arrange auditions." Thomas shook his head gently. "I appreciate that, but I have responsibilities. My daughter starts college in 2 years. That takes priority." "What if you could do both?" Richard interjected, joining them. "What if your day job was teaching music instead of cleaning floors? My company partners with the city's youth orchestra. We're looking for a new director. The position pays well, has full benefits, and would allow you to use your gift while still providing for your daughter." Thomas stared at them, unable to speak. "You don't have to give up being a father to be a musician," Adrian added. "You just need people willing to see what you can do and create space for it." "Why?" Thomas asked. "Why are you doing this?" "Because what you played tonight made me cry," Richard said simply. "At 54 years old, running a billion-dollar company, I thought I was beyond being moved. But your music reached something I'd forgotten I had. If you can do that for a cynical CEO, imagine what you could do for young people just starting out." 3 weeks later, Thomas Rivera walked into the youth orchestra's practice space as their new director. Gone was the janitor's uniform, replaced by comfortable clothes and the easy confidence of a man finally living in alignment with his gifts. His daughter Sophie attended his first performance with the orchestra, sitting in the front row with tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked afterward. "Why did you hide this?" "Because I didn't want you to feel like you cost me my dreams," Thomas said, holding her close. "You were my dream. You are my dream. The music was just what I did before I knew what really mattered." "But Dad, you're incredible. You should have been performing all along." "No," Thomas said gently. "I was exactly where I needed to be. Raising you, providing for you, being your father." The music waited. Real gifts always do. Richard Whitfield became one of Thomas's biggest supporters, not just funding the youth orchestra, but creating scholarships for talented students from low-income families. He often spoke about the night he almost missed recognizing extraordinary talent because it came in work clothes instead of a tuxedo. Adrian invited Thomas to perform with him several times, billing him as Thomas Rivera, the pianist who proves that talent doesn't conform to expectations and grace exists in unexpected places. But Thomas's favorite moments weren't on concert stages. They were in the orchestra room, working with teenagers from neighborhoods like the one where he had raised Sophie, kids who were told they weren't good enough, smart enough, refined enough for classical music. "Don't let anyone make you invisible," he told them. "Don't let anyone's limited imagination define what you can become." "I spent 15 years hiding my gift because I thought survival and artistry couldn't coexist. I was wrong. They can. They must. The world needs your beauty, whatever form it takes." 2 years later, when Sophie graduated high school with a full scholarship to study medicine, Thomas sat in the audience wearing a tuxedo, preparing to perform at her graduation ceremony. "My dad is going to play," Sophie announced to her friends with undisguised pride. "He's kind of a big deal now. He was always a big deal," Thomas said, overhearing. "You just didn't know it yet. Neither did I." That night, Thomas played for an audience of students and families, many of whom had never attended a classical music performance. He played with the same technical mastery and emotional depth that had stunned the gala audience 2 years earlier. But now he played without bitterness, without the weight of dreams. Deferred. He played with the joy of a man who had learned that the detours in life aren't always obstacles. Sometimes they're the path to becoming who you were always meant to be. Sometimes we're asked to perform as a joke, judged before we play a single note. But grace has a way of transforming mockery into recognition, revealing that the extraordinary often exists right in front of us, waiting for someone brave enough to really look. If this story of hidden talent and rediscovered dreams moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of grace in unexpected places. Comment below about a time when someone underestimated you, or when you discovered extraordinary gifts in an unlikely person. Your story might help someone else find the courage to reveal their hidden light